Welcome to the annual State of the Schools event that's hosted by the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber. I have a little bit of feedback, and I'm having a little difficulty reading my remarks. I think I'll pull out my glasses. Hold on just a sec. Okay, I can't see anything now. Okay. Wrong glasses. I guess I'll hold these over till 2017 when we have our 2024 when we have our own total eclipse. But bottom line, oh well. This was amazing how many people were engaged. Should have done that back in the 70s when I didn't screw up my eyesight. But bottom line, outside the room, I hope you saw some large boxes that were being filled with school supplies. And the Chamber, along with American Fidelity Assurance Company, have coordinated a school supply drive to benefit the Boys and Girls Club of Oklahoma County. Yes. So these supplies, as well as the supplies that are making your centerpieces, those are all going to be donated to benefit the children of Oklahoma City. Well, today marks the 13th time we've gathered at the State of the Schools luncheon, and it's about discussing the importance of education in our community. And definitely those of us in this room know the importance of supporting Oklahoma's education system. And with unprecedented challenges, it's vital that our community rally in support of improving our school systems. Because Oklahoma City's economy and our economic future is dependent on our workforce, and the training and education of an engaged and inspired workforce is sitting in our classrooms today. It's critical. And with the 2017 legislative session adjourned with no viable solution toward increasing teacher pay, or funding Oklahoma's classrooms, improving student outcomes, and building a talent pipeline is of a top priority for the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber and its members, because as the global competition for skilled talent, it's truly rapidly changing, and it will continue even more so in a faster speed. And amidst decreased state funding, local school district and higher education institutions opened their classrooms earlier this month with a continued commitment toward training the future workforce our area companies are so desperately needing. But today, we'll have plenty of opportunities to discuss problems and possible solutions. But before we begin our program, let's recognize our elected officials who are in the room. We have more than 50 elected leaders with us today from state and local government. We appreciate it, and thank you for being here today, and thank you for your commitment to our children and their education. Would all our 50 elected officials please stand and let us appreciate you? Thank you. We so appreciate, and we and our future generations of Oklahomans really value your drive and leadership toward improving our schools. Thank you very much. I also would like to thank today's signature sponsor for today's event, and that's Bank of Oklahoma. And please welcome the CEO of Bank of Oklahoma, John Higginbotham.
Thank you, Rhonda. Last year, I was on the stage and was able to announce that Bank of Oklahoma was awarding 6 $5,000 scholarships. This past May, our employees had the joy of visiting the schools where each of these seniors attended and personally sharing the great news with them. I assure you there were hugs, high fives, and a few tears with every meeting we had. Today, I want to connect the faces of the winners of the Achieving Your Goals Scholarship, and their photos are on the screen behind me. Naomi Arroyo from Santa Fe South High School. Lizette Becerra Taurina from Aztec High School. Ian Blake from Classen School of Advanced Studies High School. Evan Bostic from John Marshall High School. Jocelyn Garcia from Southeast High School, and Dania Rojo from Southeast High School. We are pleased to announce that we have decided to continue our scholarship program for 2018 because we saw the impact that it made on these young people and their families. So let me describe the student we're looking for. We want good students. They don't have to be straight A, but we want a strong personal story that they are focused on changing their future. Current high school seniors can apply beginning October 2017 through March of 2018. Our scholarships are focused on seniors who have a financial need in the Oklahoma City metro area. Applications can be found at the Oklahoma City Community Foundation website. In addition, we have recently met with Superintendent Lora and the Oklahoma City Public School Foundation to identify ways Bank of Oklahoma can continue to invest dollars into our public schools in a meaningful way to help through this current crisis. Thank you, Superintendent Lora, for all of your hard work to bring every opportunity possible to our kids in Oklahoma City. Thank you.
John, that is a major program that you're offering. Thank you personally for what you're doing. Thank you to Bank of Oklahoma for what you're doing for our community and our state. Every child needs opportunities, and that scholarship could make a difference in their entire life. Okay, today you're going to be hearing from a group of impressive leaders who are dedicated to improving the landscape of education right here in Oklahoma. So let's start with our panel discussion, moderated by Vice Chair of Talent and Education for the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, Teresa Rose Crook. Please help me welcoming Teresa. Our first panelist is Oklahoma State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Joy Hofmeister. In 2015, Superintendent Hofmeister was sworn in as Oklahoma's 14th state superintendent. Her strategic plan and state goals center on lowering remediation, raising graduation rates, and lifting educational achievement for all students, from those with unique learning struggles to those in need of greater challenge, all with a keen eye on closing opportunity and equity gaps. Let's welcome State Superintendent Joy Hofmeister. Our next panelist is Representative Leslie Osborn. Leslie Osborn was elected to the Oklahoma House of Representatives, District 47 in 2008. She has chaired the Revenue and Taxation Committee and the Appropriations Subcommittee on Natural Resources. And she was the first female in the House of Representatives to chair the Judiciary Committee. Please welcome Leslie Osborn. Well, we got to have a guy on stage, right? Just kidding. Our final panelist is Edmond Public Schools Superintendent Bret Towne. Bret, you'll never be a token, I promise that. He previously served as Associate Superintendent for 17 years with the responsibilities of district administration and operations, focusing on leadership, operations, and special projects. Superintendent Towne has 37 years of experience as an educator and 29 years in school administration. Please welcome Bret Towne. Let's give an overall applause to all our panelists, and I'm turning the chair over now to Teresa Rose Crook.
Thank you so much. Ooh, sorry, my little astronaut microphone is a little loud there. There we go. Or Janet Jackson, as somebody said. Anyway, thank you panelists all so much for coming up here. Obviously, as Rhonda said, education is a premier focus of the Oklahoma City Chamber, and I think it's evidence that it's a premier focus of our business community by the attendance today. So thank you for your time and willingness to sit up here and take questions. So we're going to start with a question for Superintendent Hofmeister. So give us an idea of where we stand now as far as the state of the budget for education. What does the current budget climate mean for education system in our state?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for the focus on education, of course, and thank you for the support of our business community. And to those in the legislature who made certain that we experienced the least of cuts, we are very grateful for that. However, we have a growing student population, one that is increasingly diverse, which means they have greater needs and greater resources are needed to meet those needs. So we are not keeping pace with that, and we have about 50,000 more students, but we're operating on the same dollars as earlier in 2008. So that's where we are, and we do this in the midst of a historic teacher shortage, which I'm sure you'll want to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Tremendous challenges, but your leadership and the work of the State Department, I know, helps all the school districts as they try to support all those kiddos. Representative Osborn, thank you again for being here. We know that the state has experienced budget shortfalls and revenue failures in the past few years. Now, with the very real possibility of a special session, there are even more questions about what will happen to the state budget. What will the impact be on state education budget, if you have any clues? And do we have more cuts in our future?
Well, I brought my cheat sheet because these are the kind of numbers you don't want to get wrong. Obviously, we are constitutionally mandated to have a balanced budget, which we did at the end of the session. However, we did that with several measures that have been under review by the state Supreme Court. The first has been overturned, the cigarette fee. That's a $220 million hit. But what we need to remember is with the federal matching dollars, those leverage, that's a $519 million hit to only 3 agencies, which was the Health Care Authority, Mental Health, and Department of Human Services. The agencies that take care of everybody from foster kids to rural nursing homes, the kind that can't handle that kind of cut. So that being said, the governor has been very firm that she believes we need to come back in for a special session and try to fix this problem. The Senate and the leadership of the House have both been a little more about let's wait and see what happens. So there's a couple other lawsuits. We feel a little better about the how they will turn out because they were the lifting of exemption, and there is legal precedent that can usually withstand that challenge, but nobody knows. But at the end of the day, once those decisions have been rendered, which we expect in the next few weeks, that decision will be made on special. If we go back into special and do nothing, and we allow those cuts to go into those healthcare agencies, that is totally devastating for our state. So I got 3 sets of numbers just to kind of give you an idea. If we reopened the budget, put those budget cuts in and held it to all agencies. For instance, if you kept common education stable, which is something we've tried to do, and let me preface by saying that I am one that understands that there is no such thing as us keeping it stable. When we say stable, we've kept it stable for 10 years. Cost of living has gone up. Student population has gone up. The beautiful reforms that we had under 1017 about classroom sizes have totally gone to the side. When you've got a teacher with 34 students in a classroom, your children are not receiving the quality education they should. That being said, if we reopened it, spread those cuts, and didn't try to bring in new revenues, kept Common Ed stable, it would be a 4.98% cut to all other agencies in the state for the rest of the fiscal year. If you kept the 3 healthcare entities stable and Common Ed and spread those cuts, it would be a 9.55% cut to every other agency in the state. If you kept all of the ones harmless that we did last year, and when I say harmless, that was at a stable funding number, that adds in things like Department of Corrections, which is already 60% overcrowded. That adds in things like District Attorney's Council, who at this point are down to such few amount of district attorney assistants that sometimes it takes 5 to 6 years to try a case, and then things are fuzzy. These are not acceptable things for core services. If we held all of those, you're talking about a 14.46% cut to all agencies. This is if nothing else is overturned. So I believe that there will be a push. There's 3 legs of the 3-legged stool to come in and potentially try to do something to rectify that number, remembering that we also used a lot of one-time monies last year. If we do nothing, and you don't count this cigarette fee, we're coming in with at least a $400 million hole next year we're going to have to deal with.
Wow. I think we often say thank you so much for your work in the legislature, and thank you for the other elected officials that are in the room and not in the room for serving our state. But you all have some really hard decisions to make.
We do.
You've got some really tough issues, and again, we appreciate the work that the legislature does, and thank you for your leadership. So Superintendent Towne, let's bring this down to the real effect level, okay? School funding is so confusing to the average voter. You know, there's been lots of conversation in Oklahoma City and throughout the state about other mechanisms. Can you help explain the difference between funds that schools get from the state and what is raised at the local level by maybe through a bond issue? Help us understand this. And how can that money be used, and how much control does districts actually have on those funds that come in?
Okay. Well, certainly that's a whole course at several universities. But schools have several funds that they deal with. The general fund, which is local, state, county, and federal money, and that's the largest fund that funds teacher salaries. You have a building fund, you have a child nutrition fund, you have a sinking fund, you have an activity fund that where the kids raise money and it's for their use in their particular clubs or groups. But the bond fund is the one fund that requires a separate vote of the people, 60% supermajority, and that really is supposed to be dedicated to constructing, funding new schools, remodeling, and you can also furnish schools, buy equipment. Textbooks are a part of that, technology, and then you can buy transportation as a separate vote on there. But it does take a 60% supermajority. The question that I continue to get is, well, why don't we take this money and give it to teacher salaries? And that's strictly prohibited by the Constitution and statute. So we can't really do that. We fight that battle all the time. But these are local funds generated at the local level. That community puts that tax burden on themselves. What we've done in schools, though, is we've used the bond fund to help fill in the gaps. 10 years ago in Edmond, we started funding textbooks out of that fund because we were only getting $45 a textbook, and an AP chemistry textbook was $150. So we were never fully funded on textbooks. We filled in the gap. Now recently, with some of the deregulation, we are still using that money to 100% from our bond fund. So we're taking that money, applying it to teacher salaries. We've done the same thing with building funds. We've used some of our bond funds for projects that might be typically a heat and air renovation, and we're just putting those on bond issues now. So really, we are placing the burden of some of those things that, in my opinion, are state requirements back in the local taxpayer's checkbook.
So to the second question, how much flexibility does the district administrations and school boards have on some of the state funds that come to you?
Well, there are guidelines that you have to do. There's things that we have to dedicate funds to that come in as line items, RSA, those type of things. We continually get mandates, though, from the legislature, like a mentoring program, and we haven't had mentoring funds. We choose to take some of our local funds and state funds, and we are paying teachers to mentor other teachers, even though it's not a requirement of law. It is so important that that first year and even the second year of a teacher's career and their start is that critical year, because if they don't have a good experience, they have a bad experience, they'll leave you in a year or two and go someplace else or take another job in another industry. So they have to have that mentoring to really help themselves get through.
Right, thank you. So on the topic of teachers, back to Superintendent Hofmeister, the state is on track to exceed the record of number of emergency certifications. And we are seeing more and more Oklahoma teachers leaving for other states or, as Superintendent Towne said, for other professions. What can we do from a statewide perspective to retain the good teachers that we have?
Well, first of all, I think we do need to address the issue of an emergency certified teacher and what that means. These are great people, people with a lot of heart, a lot of experience that is not yet necessarily in the classroom, but are willing to be a part of solving the teacher shortage. However, these are individuals, most of which do not have a background traditionally through a college of education, so they're not going to have understanding about dealing with classroom management. And then I want you to also put this in the context of someone who is stepping into education today in our classrooms, where our teachers are first having to deal with teaching a traumatized child, increasingly so, before they can actually begin the kind of traditional instruction. We are asking them to be social workers first. And so when you layer that on and you have someone who's stepping in teaching something for the very first time, there's a steep learning curve. We don't want to lose these folks, and it is going to take a lot of professional development support to give them the needs that they have to persist and stay in the profession. But an emergency certified means no one is applying who is qualified. So that has increased so dramatically. 32 of those special situations in 2011 to last year, we had 1,160. And in just 2 months, June and July of this summer, almost 900.
Wow.
So we're talking about our superintendents having to go out and recruit, which is very much like if you're in business. I was a businesswoman for 16 years, and I would be spending my time as a headhunter instead of as an instructional leader over a school or a district who is working to provide that kind of training and support that all professionals need. And instead, they're looking for someone who they trust to step into the classroom. Our kids deserve better. And we are not going to be able to implement a very aggressive strategic 8-year plan for education that we are launching in September that will allow Oklahomans to be on the cutting edge with innovative teaching strategies that are evidence-based to give our kids a competitive edge. Our state will not be able to compete without a competitive education in public school. And that is something that we have to put at the front burner. And yes, we are grateful for the flat funding, but remember that that also means that flat means that the cuts of the past haven't been filled. So one example for you is the Public School Activity Fund line item. And that's where reading sufficiency training for those who cannot read and are struggling, we draw from. That's where we have various programs for Sooner Start for our children who have developmental delays identified at birth through 36 months. Alternative education. That's where so much of the support that we offer to our schools is funded, and that was cut by $38 million previous year, and then it held flat, so that meant another $38 million that wasn't coming in to fill those needs, and then growing students and no teachers. We can have the highest standards in the world, but if we don't have the teachers to teach them, what good is it? So we've got to do something.
Wow, thank you for doing what you can, and it sounds like you're trying with the resources that you have, so thank you for your priorities. Back to you, Representative Osborn. The Federal Bureau of Economic Analysis recently reported that Oklahoma's GDP rose for the second consecutive quarter, and that in the month of July, all major revenue streams expanded compared to the prior year. With a stronger economy, what do you feel is the likelihood of a teacher pay raise for this year?
Okay, so first of all, we never hear good news, so let's think about this good news for a minute.
Good news.
It's really exciting. So the fiscal numbers came in for July. They were up 73%, or 7.3%, which was 8.6 million. Let me get that right. This is why you bring your cheat sheet. 73 million up. That was an 8.6% rise from the same month last year. Very encouraging. We have very low rates of unemployment. That means more people are being hired, more people are paying taxes in different segments. Now, to put a slight damper on that, The Equalization Board comes in 1 year in advance, looks at trends of what they see on oil prices to job growth, and gives us an estimate of what that will be. What we did in July was met the projections of what they had said. So even though those numbers were higher, which is good, and we want them to continue doing that, that doesn't mean a whole lot more is going to flow into the coffers for us to utilize next year, because it just met the projection because we saw we were coming out of the slump. But that being said, anytime you see those kind of trends 4 quarters in a row, you're in a recession. We've actually had 2 quarters now where we're going in the opposite direction, so that's a positive. But speaking with the tax commission, a lot of times when you see this uptick in the economy, it takes 18 to 24 months to actually see it start coming in the tax collections in the treasury. So it's a slow progress, but it's good progress. That being said, your question was, does that mean that we can pay for a teacher pay raise this year? So everyone knows we ran several measures that would have done a 5-year, it was 1,000, 2003, but that takes about $53 million a year to fund a teacher pay raise, and that's in perpetuity. Are those numbers going to be there? To be honest, I feel like without a revenue measure, when we're only meeting Equalization Board numbers, if we don't see some form of a revenue measure to actually be the dedicated funding source, it's going to be very difficult, and that will take House and Senate and executive branch leadership to say that we expect that. And I mean, just talking to people across the state, and maybe I'm wrong, I think people are tired of us being Republicans and being Democrats, and they want us to fix this. I think most people... I think most people truly, in their hearts, believe that our children are our future, and that if we want our children to be the workforce of our future, if we want our children and grandchildren to stay in this state, we've got to throw off those party lines, and we've got to roll our sleeves up and fix this and make tough votes, even if it's an election year. So make sure that your representative and senators are the ones, regardless of party, that are willing to fix our future, which is our children.
Thank you. Because after all, Leslie, we're all Oklahomans, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Superintendent Towne, how is your district specifically handling the decreased funding levels? What are some of the challenges that are arising from this financial situation, and how are you choosing to handle them?
Okay. Well, first I'd like to say that I am the superintendent of Edmond, but a third of our kids are in Oklahoma City. 25% of our land is in Oklahoma City, so we consider ourselves a hybrid. So I really appreciate the invitation to come here today, because it really is about all those 25,000 kids we're expecting this year. But we continually have to deal with this budget issue. Last year was a little bit more of a concern. We cut $4.3 million, but we'd been cutting all along, anticipating it. Our budget process is a 3-year process. We're always continually looking at 3 years ahead. So we're making adjustments now for things that we think are going to happen in 2 years. We actually gave teacher pay raises this year a step and $400 on the step. We think things might get a little bit better, but the cuts that we made were really, I think they were sort of the essence of our school district. Administrators gave up 2 days of pay. Support people gave up 1 day of pay. Teachers gave up 1 day of pay. That was for the whole last year. We cut site budgets. We moved money around. We've used our building fund to the extent that we can. We've shifted money into contracts and all, just trying to get as efficient as we can so that every dollar that we have goes into a classroom. And I will still say that we're still not there. One day this summer, the North principal called me and he said, "Hey, I just lost 5 teachers in 1 day." And this is at what some people might consider like the #1 high school in the state. 4 to Texas, 1 to Kansas. The 2 that went to Texas for a Fort Worth suburb, they raised their salary $50,000 as a family. So they could not take the job. So we still are fighting those type of things. You know, it really is just amazing that we are where we are, and we're still seeing that achievement is not falling, but in a lot of areas is going up. So the teachers that are here are the most dedicated people that you'll ever want to work with, and I'm so proud to work with them, and I know Superintendent Hofmeister is as well. But we can't continue this curve. We can't continue this hole. The difference in Edmond between 2008 and this year is we have 5,000 more kids in this 10-year period. So our budgets have gone up because of that. But the difference in what a student was, quote, worth in the formula is almost $300 difference. That's taking out the FBA, the insurance that's paid, and it's taking out the way the ad valorem adjustments are. So if we were just funded at 2008 levels, we'd have almost $7.5 million. We could give a $3,000 pay raise to every teacher in our school district, have $2.5 million for programs. Our district has 8 nurses for 25,000 kids. We have 1 counselor for every 650 kids at a high school. We have programs in reading that we'd like to implement for dyslexia and all. We just don't have the funds to do it. And I would say that this year that we are going to see Edmond not be able to fill all their teaching positions here at the first of the school because we've had growth and we're trying to find teachers right now. And we're going to see continually larger class sizes until this is reversed. And it won't reverse in 1 year, it won't reverse in 5. It'll be someplace between 5 and 10 years if we gave teachers a pay raise today, that we have candidates in the pipeline that can come into our classrooms.
Wow.
Can I just add something to that? We have looked at the last 13 years. The average length of stay of a teacher in Oklahoma is 6 years. We lose 46% of our teachers in the first 1 to 5 years. 46% of our overall population of teachers over a 13-year period. This is a critical problem that has to be addressed, and our kids are going to suffer for it. Every year we fail to adequately invest in what is needed with the kinds of supports we know how to give. We ultimately are divesting in Oklahoma's future.
Thank you. Well, and as the business community fully understands, every time you lose an employee and there's significant cost with recruiting and retraining and retooling that person. So thank you all three so much for being willing to sit up here and talk about a tough issue for our state. But I know I learned quite a few things, and I very much appreciate you taking your time today. Let's say thank you to our panel. Now we invite you to enjoy your lunch, and we will have our sponsors for today's lunch on the screens. Then you can, so they can be recognized. Thank you. It's a joint effort of the Oklahoma City Public Schools, the Oklahoma City Public Schools Foundation, United Way of Central Oklahoma, the Oklahoma City Chamber, and I'm forgetting somebody, the City of Oklahoma City. Sorry, of course, the city. The compact's purpose and intention is to ensure that educational success is our community's job, and through that mutual ownership, that we would be able to pull together the resources, the intellect, the thought processes to affect some of these changes. The structure is that the compact would identify issues with Oklahoma City Public Schools telling us what their primary needs were, and then we would pull together task force on some of those specific challenges. Task forces where the community, the larger community, could be of greater impact and support as we address some of the needs. To date, the compact has created 2 task forces, one focused on literacy and one focused on, and it was so interesting to hear Superintendent Hofmeister's comment, on mental health and comprehensive student needs. In May, the compact announced that its first task force, which is focused on improving literacy, would launch a summer reading program for elementary school students during the summer. What this did is it was a call to action for our students to get in the game. The Read OKC initiative challenged students to read 20 minutes every day during the summer for a total of 1,200 minutes over the summer. Now, you may be asking yourself why this was so important. What we see in students, especially our struggling readers, or those students that lack access during the summer to learning opportunities, is that over the summer, they tend to lose and forget what they learned during the school year. One of the easiest ways to prevent the summer slide, as it's called, is to encourage reading during these summer months. So we are thrilled that this initiative had such a tremendous impact. The initiative rallied more than 60 companies, many of whom are in this room today, around the cause. They pulled together their intellect, their resources, their Rolodexes, their expertise to try to address this issue to make summer reading more accessible to some of our most needy students. And the result was that we had over 17,000 elementary school students read over the summer. Those readers completed more than 650,000 books and spent over 150,000 hours reading throughout the summer. And I could not be more excited. Now, while we don't have quantitative data of the impact of that reading program for those individual students yet, which is something we're putting in place for next year, teachers are already telling us anecdotally that they have seen improvement in their students returning in comparison to previous return back to class student performance. We are so proud of our students that participated in our Read OKC initiative, and are tremendously grateful for all of the companies that participated to make this a program where students could access reading during the summer. Now, the second task force is the Mental Health and Comprehensive Student Needs Task Force. Now, it's only been working since June, and the effort is being led by Debbie Hampton, of the Director of United Way of Central Oklahoma. I do know your title, Debbie, sorry. And Terry White, Oklahoma State Commissioner of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. This task force was really focused on trying to identify what needs students have. How can we be supportive as a community to make sure that they're prepared for learning? So that task force started by doing an assessment, an inventory, if you will, of what already is going on in the schools that's being provided by either United Way agencies, the state, or even the district. The task force currently is working on conducting a student district-wide assessment. And this assessment will give us a more in-depth look at what students actually need, what their challenges are, and how we can provide some services to wrap around and help them be prepared for learning. The survey is something now this is, I have to stop and say, this is where the power of Oklahomans and Oklahoma Cityans really, I think, comes to bear. The survey is something that has been done before, and it's typically done, it takes about 12 months to do. This task force and the power of this task force of pulling these people together are going to get this survey done in 1 month. Thank you. Thank you so much to Commissioner and to Debbie for getting this done. What that means is that we are going to be able, by the end of September, to identify the resources that need to be in place and start getting those resources in place for these students starting at the beginning of October. Now, the simple fact is that many of our students and families are facing serious both mental health issues as well as family circumstance needs. And when those situations are in place, it's very hard for students to learn in the classroom. Just as Superintendent Hofmeister mentioned, When a student has emotional issues or difficulty concentrating, it makes the classroom experience even that much more difficult for the teacher and for the student to be able to gain those skills that we need them to be part of our workforce and part of our greater community. Together, we know that we can make a difference on these issues and for our students. The Chamber plans to continue leading the discussion on how the community at large can help stand in the gap for our students. We know that there are many challenges, but if each of us makes an effort, those efforts can add up to big change. Now, I would like to welcome someone who has firsthand knowledge of the challenges and opportunities that face Oklahoma City Public School District. Oklahoma City Public Schools Superintendent Aurora Lora joined Team OKCPS in 2014 and is responsible for developing, implementing, and supervising district-wide curriculum, working with human resources to train and evaluate staff, and monitoring student achievement and school effectiveness. Prior to coming to Oklahoma City, Superintendent Lora served as the Assistant Superintendent for the Dallas Independent School District, Executive Director of the Pre-K to 12 schools for Seattle Public Schools, and was a middle high school principal in Portland Public Schools. Please welcome Superintendent Aurora Lora.
Good afternoon, Oklahoma City. I am so honored and happy to be standing before you today for a second year as Superintendent of Oklahoma City Public Schools. Last year, I shared how thrilled I was to have been named superintendent and how this was my dream job. 1 year and a few battle scars later, here to tell you I still love this job, still wearing my Oklahoma necklace, and there's no place I'd rather be than OKC. So today I want to share with you some of the great work happening in our district and my plans for OKCPS over the next few years. But before I get started, I want to thank the members of our Board of Education who are with us today. I'm so fortunate to be working with such a dedicated team of elected officials who want to support this district in making OKC one of the best school districts in the nation. So please extend a welcome and a thank you to my members of the school board. Can they please rise? They're in here. We have Board Chair Paula Lewis, Vice Chair representing District 6, Gloria Torres. District 1 is Charles Henry. District 2 is Rebecca Budd. District 3 is Carrie Jacobs. District 4 is Mark Mann. District 5 is Ruth Fields. And District 7 is Ron Milliken. So thank you, all of our board members, for the work that you do for our district. Also, that's right, let's hop again. I also want to thank Roy Williams, Drew Dugan, and Teresa Rose for your partnership as we work together to improve our schools. I love this chamber and will be formally thanking them later in this presentation for the support they've given us. Also want to take a moment to thank my leadership team and any Oklahoma City school employee that's in the audience today. Will you guys please rise? These are the people that make the work happen for our kids. So let's give them all a round of applause. We even have some principals here today. And don't worry, we didn't pay for those tickets, so don't put that on Twitter. Thank you to the donors who allowed us to come eat free. Also, I want to give a heartfelt thanks to Mary Malone and the Schools Foundation. Mary has been an amazing mentor to me and has transformed the foundation's relationship with the district through her work with Donor Shoes, Partners in Action, and the Bilingual Teachers Pipeline. And I just owe a huge, huge debt of gratitude to Mary Malone. So last year, I shared a little bit about my story and my background and why I got into this work. And you heard about my experience graduating valedictorian of a low-income high school in El Paso, Texas, and my experience then showing up completely unprepared for my first year of college at the University of Texas. And that experience inspired me to want to go back and work in education to make sure that schools are doing a better job of preparing kids for success after high school. And this year, I want to tell you a different story, a story about what keeps me going in this work on my hardest days. And it's a story about a student from my first year of teaching when I was an emergency certified teacher. So I invite you to step into Miss Lora's classroom with me. It was August 2000, and I had just become a fourth grade teacher in Houston, Texas. First day of teaching will forever be burned into my memory, because that morning at around 10 a.m., I took my students for a bathroom break, and the third graders were down there while my fourth graders were in line, and I remember the third grade teacher came over and looked at my students and was complimenting them on doing such a great job standing quietly. And then she looked at my students and pointed to a boy named Adrian and said, "How on earth did Adrian Valdez end up in your fourth grade class? I failed that boy last year, and the principal must have passed him on in summer school. He's not smart enough for fourth grade, and don't blame me when he fails again this year." Adrian stared at the floor with his face and ears turning bright red, trying desperately not to cry. And I knew at that moment we had to prove this teacher wrong. And now, granted, Adrian was starting out the school year below grade level in reading, math, and writing. He had failed both sections of the state exam the year before, and I knew we had a huge task ahead of us. And as the year went on, I realized that our time in class wasn't going to be enough to catch him up. But we worked together every day, and we set goals and tracked his progress, and he made little bar graphs to show how he was improving on each objective. And as his scores on the practice test began to rise, his confidence began to increase. And he and I sat down one day and had a heart-to-heart talk. And I told him that sometimes it's hard to believe in yourself when everyone around you doesn't believe in you. But I could see a spark within him that others couldn't seem to see. And I told him he had a special gift for writing, which he did. And then I knew this was going to be the year that we were going to prove to everyone just how smart and capable he was. Well, finally the test came and went, and in May we got our scores back. And all the other teachers raced down to the principal's office to find out how their kids did. But me, I was the last one down there because I was so scared. I was terrified about what I was going to tell him if he didn't pass. We worked so hard, and I spent so much energy trying to build him up, but it would be just devastating if he didn't make it. And as a first-year teacher, I just didn't know. Well, the next day, I told my students the scores were back, and I called each of them out in the hallway to find out their scores. And I went down the list alphabetically, calling each of the students one by one, and Adrian Valdez was the last student on the list to be called. And when I called his name, I looked over and saw that he had his head down on the desk and was shaking. And when he stood up, I noticed there were tears starting to stream down his face, and he was trembling by the time he got to the hallway. And I asked him what was wrong, and he looked at me and told me that this entire time he had believed me when I told him he was really smart, and that if he just worked hard enough, he could accomplish anything. And he said he really believed me and put everything he had into proving people wrong. But then he said, "Miss Lora, what if all this time you were the one that was wrong? What if my best isn't good enough? What if everyone else was right about me?" Well, I stopped him from going any further, and I smiled as I broke the good news. Not only did he pass all 3 sections of the state exam, but his math and reading scores improved almost 25 points over his third grade score, and he tied for the highest grade in the school on the state writing test. And we both cried as he gave me a big hug right there in the hallway. And then he did a cartwheel, and then he threw the door of the classroom open and ran in and went, "Yes!" And all the kids cheered for him. And I'll never forget the look of pride in his eyes the day that I realized, that he realized all of his hard work had paid off. And at the end of that school year, Adrian was moved out of the third grade remedial reading class and moved into the 6th grade advanced reading class because of the reading gains he had made in 1 year. And every time I think about his story, I'm reminded of the power and the responsibility that we have as teachers to shape our students' lives. What I love about Adrian's story is that his circumstances are reflected in the situations of many of our students in OKCPS. And it shows that you don't need a superhero to make a huge difference in the lives of kids from difficult backgrounds. When teachers have the right mindset and the resources they need to put the supports in place to help students like Adrian, amazing things can happen. But I want to be clear about this story. As a first-year emergency certified teacher, I didn't do this alone. I had high-quality textbooks and supplemental instructional materials that I used to help catch Adrian up to grade level. In the state of Texas, they had capped elementary school class sizes at 24. In fact, 22 for grades K through 4. I only had 16 students in my class that year, so I was able to give kids the individual support that they needed to really help close those gaps. My school had funding to teach me to pay after-school tutorials and Saturday school, which is what was needed if kids came to you several grade levels below. And my school also had a full-time counselor and a full-time nurse and a social worker. And those are the supports that were needed when I had stuff that I realized I couldn't give him, but his family needed some extra help. Together, these were my partners in the work, and together we were able to change students' lives. And these are the things that teachers in Oklahoma need in order to change the trajectory of their students' lives as well. So next I'm going to tell you about some of the things that we are proud of right now in Oklahoma City, and what we plan to accomplish over the next few years, and why we need your support for adequate funding to make sure that our teachers have the supports they need to help change the trajectory of children like Adrian who are currently in our schools. Transformative change is possible, but we can't do this without adequate support and funding from our community and state. So to start with some of the things we are really proud of though right now, in the district, we have really been working hard to increase the access that students have to advanced rigorous coursework. So we have worked really hard and increased our numbers significantly on the students who are now taking advanced placement courses and tests, and our scores are going up. We currently have 2 schools that have now exceeded the national average on kids scoring a 3 or above on AP exams, and those 2 schools are Classen SAS and U.S. Grant High School. But what this means is that more kids are gaining access to a rigorous curriculum, and our high schools are doing a better job to prepare them to be successful. We also have something great that's going to be offered to all of our kids this year, and it's a SAT prep program for every kid in the district through Khan Academy. And we are paying for kids to take the PSAT, and now their accounts get linked to the Khan Academy, which gives them a specialized tutorial program on the specific areas of the SAT that they didn't do well on, and get tutoring, and it will help their scores go up, and you're going to see increases. This is something we're so excited to roll out. We're partnering with the College Board, but it's available to every child who takes the PSAT. It's free, and families no longer have to pay lots of money to get PSAT and SAT prep for students. So we're really excited about that. We're also really excited about this program that we've rolled out called Summit Base Camp. And this is a scene from one of our classrooms. We have 8 schools that are currently doing this. And basically in these schools, we have changed what education looks like, where students work on the curriculum on their own personal computers and spend teacher time working on going in depth with student projects. And what is really great about this is kids are super engaged. They're moving through the curriculum at their own pace, which for a lot of kids means they're moving faster than ever before. We even had a kid from Jackson Elementary last year who finished all of the 6th grade curriculum by December and moved into all 7th grade coursework starting when he came back after the break in January. Kids are moving, discipline rates are going down, kids are being able to master objectives at a rate that we've never seen before because no one's having to sit in a lecture of something they've already learned. So this is really exciting. We started at 3 schools. It's now expanded to 8. And the whole thing is being funded by Facebook and the Mark Zuckerberg Foundation. And we are just thrilled to have brought this to Oklahoma City. We're going to invite metro area superintendents to come take a look at it. But it's something that we really think is going to be a game changer for Oklahoma City. We have, and here's a great picture. As kids master, this is where they're showing their principal. They get to make charts to show how they're moving through the units, and it's just something that's really fun and the kids love. Also made some really good gains in suspensions, and many of you know we had an OCR complaint filed against us a few years ago, but we have made significant decreases to the number of short-term and long-term suspensions. Overall, our suspensions are down 26% last year. Long-term suspensions are down 29% in the last year and 62% over the last 2 years. And what this means is we're doing a better job of keeping students in school more and finding other ways to work with them on challenges. We also passed the Yes the Yellow bond, which I cannot tell you how happy this makes me. Thank you so much to the Chamber for helping to run that, but for once, we are now able to get all of our broken air conditioners fixed. We got dangerous buses off the road, so here's a happy picture of a brand new yellow bus that we were so excited that got out on the streets this year. And it's gonna be able to help us upgrade our technology and get working computers and up-to-speed wireless in all the schools. So we just wanna give a huge shout out to the taxpayers who helped support us. This was something desperately needed and is much, much appreciated. We also applied and were awarded Community Eligibility Provision status. That's what we're calling CEP. And this is the program where every kid in the Oklahoma City Public Schools gets to eat breakfast and lunch for free, no matter what your background. Our district, yeah, this is great. Our district was previously, it was 90% free and reduced lunch, so many of the students already qualified anyway. But for the small percentage of kids who didn't qualify, sometimes things might happen in their families where they weren't able to come up with the money to pay for lunch. Maybe a family member lost their job, or there's all kinds of things that could happen. And what ends up happening is if a kid can't pay, in most places, they're allowed to rack up a bill for a little bit, and then it comes to a point where the district won't serve them meals anymore. They get a cheese sandwich, and in some places, that's where lunch shaming takes place, where they're forced to work in the cafeteria or do different things like that. We didn't want that to ever happen to kids in Oklahoma City. So we applied for the district CEP process, got this grant to be able to give every kid free meals no matter what your background. No one's chasing you down for money. You don't have to tell us why you don't have it. It's just a really, really wonderful feel-good thing, and we're seeing the number of kids eating every day in the cafeteria skyrocket. So we're so happy about this, and we hope every district moves on to a program like this. Also, we just finished our 12th clean audit. And I'm going to say, even with the terrible budget crisis that we're in, we managed to protect our fund balance and still scrape enough money together at the end of this past year to give our teachers a raise, small raise. And I don't care what anyone says, though. Money invested in teachers is not a waste of taxpayer dollars. It's investment in our future. We also open with the fewest number of vacancies that we've had in a very, very long time. 2 years ago, we had 100 vacancies on the first day of school. Last year, we opened with 35. This year, we opened with 28. So we're starting to close that gap and get more teachers, although our number of emergency certified teachers is going up. But we're making sure that even more classrooms have a teacher on the first day of school. But at the same time, we are still in the middle of a budget crisis. And it makes it really challenging for us to do all the things that we want to do for kids to the best of our abilities when we're constantly having to make cuts. But despite that, we are focused on moving forward as a district and still doing the best that we can to roll out new initiatives to make our district a better place. Here's one of our happy kids on the first day with his free lunch. And the 4 big buckets of work that we're really trying to improve for Oklahoma City are improving the quality of teaching and learning, building a great culture where people love to come to work and where kids love to come to school, investing in people and building a pipeline and supporting them so teachers want to come back every year and don't want to leave us to go to Texas, and then just improving our systems and becoming more efficient with the resources that we have so we can invest every dollar, every penny that we have into supporting classrooms and teachers. So I'm going to share with you a few things that you're going to see us rolling out this year. In teaching and learning, the state has rolled out new academic standards. We have a new assessment system, and we are raising the bar and the level of rigor for all kids in the state of Oklahoma, because we want to make sure that when kids graduate from our systems, they are not going to have to take remedial courses when they get to college. So we're really excited to be going deeper into these new academic standards. One of the things that we heard loud and clear last year from our principals is that they didn't have enough in terms of instructional materials for literacy in their classrooms. And so we scraped together the pennies that we had to go ahead and make an additional $2.2 million of supplemental literacy materials for OKC teachers this year. So even though it is challenging, we're still finding ways to get teachers the supports they need to be able to do their job for kids. You heard a little bit earlier about our big Read OKC initiative that we did with the Compact. Here's a great picture of our kickoff where Clifford the dog came to inspire kids to want to read more. It was a great event, and we just saw success all over with kids reading from all different places in the summer and hopefully finding things that they love to read so they continue that as a habit through the whole school year. And here's a picture of the Thunder bus. Also partnered with the Thunder. They've done a number of wonderful things, but one of the things that I love is that they bring this bus out and kids get to come pick free books to take to their homes, which is great, especially if they don't have very many books. Oops. In terms of culture, we've been doing a number of things. One group that really stepped up this year is the All Access Arts Committee for the Arts Council of Oklahoma City. And this is a group of people that came together who knew we had had to make a lot of cuts to arts over the past 2 years because of the budget. And so what they said is they wanted to come together, apply for grants, and find extra funding to put art back into the schools that had taken the cuts. So this past year, they applied for a $50,000 grant from the Kirkpatrick Family Fund and got additional arts classes put back at the 8 schools that had taken the biggest cuts to the arts over the past year. And we are so grateful that they stepped up to help our kids become well-rounded citizens. Athletic opportunities are also still expanding. Fields and Futures has done an amazing job remaking our sports fields and just partnered with the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation and Delaware Life to get a huge donation to go ahead and finish redoing all the rest of our sports facilities in Oklahoma City, which is huge. There is no way we could have afforded to do that on our own. And what we know from looking at our data is when kids are getting involved in sports, it's giving them more of a reason to love coming to school, to want to keep their grades up because they don't want to have to explain to their coaches what's wrong with their GPA. And we're seeing improved attendance numbers. Everything gets better when kids love coming to school and when they have something that makes them really excited and passionate. So we just want to thank them. Also, I've got the OKC PAL Foundation on this slide. What's really great is OKC PAL, the Police Athletic League, has started elementary school sports teams in our elementary schools for 5th and 6th grade, so that when kids get to middle school, they want to join up with the official teams. This is really expanded. Now they're doing all kinds of sports in our elementary school, trying to give kids a healthy place to go after school. And they're currently looking for volleyball and football coaches. So if any of you have even just like a little bit of skill, please come tell us because we need like 20 more coaches. As you heard a little bit earlier, mental health is a really big thing that I am passionate about putting more into our schools. This year I did decrease the counselor ratio because I want to make sure we're getting more counselors into our schools. But we're excited that we've partnered with the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Service Department, United Way, to figure out how do we identify where the holes are and get mental health supports for every kid who needs it, because we know a lot of our kids experience trauma. We want to take the stigma away from getting help for the students, for their families, and I believe that this will be a game changer in terms of improving our discipline rates if we can really address some of the underlying issues with our students. Great people. We have really invested a lot in trying to get teachers more support. This job does feel overwhelming at times, but we've put instructional coaches into all our schools, so every new teacher can have a mentor. We've started to build pipelines where people can start to take leadership roles at their school and get into the pipeline if they're interested in staying and going into administration. Also really invested a lot in professional development and differentiated professional development because we know that not all teachers need the same training. And so our team has done a really great job of offering special days where teachers can come and go to workshops that'll help them with areas that they select. And then in terms of great systems, we've been doing a lot of different things to try and improve transparency with the city. We started live streaming our board meetings. We're increasing financial transparency. We're doing a long-term demographic study to help us be strategic about our buildings and facilities and where we need to build more buildings and what areas might not have populations coming back. Build up student advisory committees, teacher advisory committees, and principal advisory committees, and we're talking to people about their experiences and what we can do to make it better for everyone who interacts with OKC schools. And just doing a lot of listening tours to gather feedback on the things that are broken and to figure out how to solve them. Also, just want to give some special thanks. I mean, this has been such a challenging year, but we've got some really special partners who've hugely stepped up to support our foundation, which helps our schools. So Love's Travel Stops is announcing today that they have just made a $100,000 donation to the OKC Schools Foundation, which thank you, thank you, thank you. This is so needed right now. Right there in the middle of this slide is a beautiful picture of Dick and Glenna Tannenbaum, who made a $150,000 donation every year for the next 5 years to the City Foundation, Schools Foundation. And the other partners on here who've just hugely stepped up to help our initiatives with Donors Choose and Partners in Action, and I'm going to go on about those in just a few slides. So you might be wondering, how can you help? You know, we do face a number of huge budget challenges. And we can either let this budget situation paralyze us, or we can let it teach us how to be crafty and how to find ways to succeed in spite of these challenges. When I choose to lead this amazing team of educators in a way where we can be resourceful and we will make things work in tough times, and where we will not get discouraged when it feels overwhelming. We will get through this, but we can't do this alone, and this is where we really do need your help. There are a number of ways that you can step up to support our teachers. Donors chooses a website where teachers go online to post projects for the supplies that they need for their classrooms that their schools can't afford. And we don't pay our teachers very much, so we can't ask them to keep dipping into their own pockets to buy instructional materials and things that their school just doesn't have. So here's a really great picture of a teacher getting a box of the things she ordered on Donors Choose. You can go online and type in your own zip code, and it'll pull up all the teachers that live around your house who need a little bit of support. And even a $5 or $10 donation will go a long way to helping teachers know you support them and you want to be part of the solution. And by $10, I of course mean $100, because if you could afford a ticket here, then I know you've probably got a little bit more money in your checkbook. But you know, it's a really great way. I encourage you to donate to a teacher, share it on social media, get your friends. If everyone kicks in just a few dollars, we can make a huge difference. And I'm just going to say, I brought my own little list. I've been going on and donating to teachers, so I'm challenging all of you to do this as well. Partners in Action is another great way that you can step up to support us. These are events where the principals put what their school needs are. Principals can't post on Donors Choose, so they've got a way that they're telling people what are some of the things they need donations for or volunteers for. Tonight we have a really great Partners in Action event at Northwest Classen High School for all of the schools in that feeder pattern, but this is where people can go. Your companies can find out, is there something that you can donate to help one of the schools that's in need? They have sample cards, you can take the cards, you can go on the website, but there are lots and lots of ways for you to help our schools get the stuff that they need to have a great school year.
I just walked in to find you here with that sad look upon your face. I should have changed that stupid lie. I should have made you leave the key. If I had known for just 1 second, you'll be back to follow me. Oh, now go. Walk out the door. Just turn around now. 'Cause you're not welcome anymore. Weren't you the one who tried to hurt me with the lie? You think I crumble? You think I lay down and I'm a survivor? I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop.
Okay, I jumped into the music before I got to do my lead up. But basically, that was a clip from the second week of school from our kids at Webster Middle School. And I think the message from our kids is the message that I want to share with this whole community. The odds may be stacked against us right now, but we're up for this challenge and determined to succeed. We will overcome tough times, and we're not going to just survive, we're going to thrive. And we're going to emerge from this budget crisis smarter and more resourceful. And I guarantee, like I said last year, 5 years from now, this is going to be a district that this whole nation is watching. And it's actually starting to become a district right now that people are watching. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here. You guys are what's help us get through this. And I just want to thank you so much for your commitment to helping our district on this journey. And most of all, just thank you so much for your commitment to the students of Oklahoma City and the entire state of Oklahoma. Thank you.
Wow, with that kind of leadership, Oklahoma City Public Schools is absolutely going to do more than survive. You're going to thrive. Superintendent Aurora, thank you so much for all of your leadership, your enthusiasm, and your commitment to our kids. So now, our challenges with education are not just at the Common Ed level. There are also lots of challenges at the higher ed level. We're pleased to have President of Oklahoma State University, Burns Hargis, here with us today to detail the critical role and impact higher education institutions have on improving the future talent pipeline, in addition to remarking on higher education's response to state budget challenges. President Hargis took office as the 18th president of Oklahoma State University on March 10, 2008. He is guiding OSU during a time of unprecedented momentum thanks to record enrollment, record construction, and record fundraising, spurred by his visionary $1 billion branding success campaign. A creative and dynamic leader, President Hargis has both a bold vision of creating a premier land-grant university and preparing ethical leaders who will make a positive, meaningful, and enduring difference in our world. Before being named OSU president, President Hargis had a long and distinguished legal and business career with active civic and philanthropic, good Lord, leadership across many fronts. Maybe I need to go back to school, Burns. He is also a past chair of this body, the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber. Please welcome President Burns Hargis.
Well, I know you need to be out of here in about 15 minutes, so that you're not going to have to suffer very long, but I thoroughly enjoyed that, Aurora. And it's what you're doing is so important because obviously you're training our future students, and we need everything that's going on at your school district, so congratulations. We get a lot of students from Oklahoma City schools, and we appreciate your efforts. School just started Monday, so it's kind of crazy up there. We actually have our all-time highest enrollment, and if you walk around, you're going to... The kids are excited, and nobody's tweeting about me yet, so that's going great. I'm really thinking about growing a mullet. I think that seems to have worked for Mike, so maybe we can do that. You know, when my popularity, my approval rating goes in the dirt is when they forecast snow, because then I get these at Burns Hargis, man up, close school, or at Burns Hargis, don't put my child at risk. Now it was the child that wrote that. It was not the parent. My favorite we had a couple of years ago, we did have a big snow. I mean, I grew up part of the time in Canada, so I don't understand this closing for snow. But in any event, this kid tweeted, because we stayed open, the kid tweeted, "At Burns Hargis, would you come get me? I'm in a ditch." So it gets brutal, but I hope you're not getting those kinds of tweets in your world. I'm gonna make fast work of this because my job, I think, is to create the nexus between the importance between economic development and higher ed. And I think it's generally accepted that there is a strong nexus because, after all, we're training the talent that our industries need. And if they can't get that talent, either they're not going to grow or they might actually leave. So it's very important that we have more college grads. If you look at the charts, it's a linear correlation between per capita income and percentage of college graduates. And unfortunately, in Oklahoma, we have about 24% of us have college degrees. The national average is about 30%, but if you look at states like Connecticut or Massachusetts and places like that, they're up in the 40s and 50s. In fact, Washington, D.C. is actually the highest. I don't know what that says about our country, but we don't have enough grads to fill the jobs we have now open. We have about 18,000 jobs open right now. And they say by 2020, 2/3 of the jobs will require some post-secondary education. So really, more grads is a silver bullet. I mean, it really will propel Oklahoma forward because we're giving all these incentives, great incentives to companies, but we're not giving them the human capital that they need to really be successful. And there's a lot of impediments, and Aurora's talking about some of them. The challenge is, for example, Boeing, Tinker, I hear constantly from all of them, Nordam, American Airlines maintenance facility, they need more engineers. We've doubled our engineering school at Oklahoma State in the last 7 years. And one of the ways we did it was, the big hurdle was calculus. These students want to major in engineering, but they had not gotten the training in calculus they needed to do college calculus. So now we give a test, it's called the ALEC test, to these students, and if they're not ready for college calculus, we don't let them enroll. We've turned half a floor of the library into a math learning lab, and we start working with them. Well, it's skyrocketed. The DEF and withdrawal rate has just plummeted in calculus. So the better Aurora can train those kids in calculus, the less we have to do and more engineers we can turn out. This college, as Teresa said, I actually was chairman of this chamber, very proud of that time, but I was also vice chair of economic development when this guy showed up, Roy Williams. And we were just reminiscing. When we were recruiting Dell, I can't remember what year that was, but we were at Presbyterian Health Foundation and put on a heck of a performance. I actually thought I did great, as he modestly says. And so this guy from Dell, and he's all business. He said, no small talk. He said, listen, we're looking at other cities. We learned it was Orlando. We're looking at other cities. And, everybody's got nice people and good weather and good transportation system and all that. But what you don't have that we're worried about is enough college grads, because we're going to use a lot of college grads. And we've talked to the Okies that work for us in Round Rock, and they don't want to come home. And so we kind of gulped and ended up doing a poll for them to show that if college grads had the same job, the same money, they'd come back or they'd stay in Oklahoma. And that poll showed that. And they finally decided to come to Oklahoma City instead of Orlando. So that's proof positive of how important it is to have the talent and have the grads here. As far as economic development, higher ed is a big driver of economic development. Some studies show that it contributes about $9 billion to our economy every year. I always learned, I learned some in economics, that money economic development happens when money comes from outside a region into the region. If it doesn't come from outside in, you're just trading money. But if it comes from outside, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. It can come from the federal government, it can come from a company, it can come from another country, as long as it comes from outside in. Well, higher ed, certainly OU and OSU, bring in a lot of money from out of state. Just Oklahoma State brings in tuition and fees from non-resident students. And by the way, this year's class, thanks to Kyle Ray, has 35% from out of state. We take every Oklahoma kid that's eligible that wants to come. We bring in, and grants and contracts from the federal government, we bring in about $340 million a year. Our foundation raises about $180 million a year. If they ever do a statue of me at OSU, I'll have my hand out. But that's well over $500 million. Well, any economist would multiply that by 4 or 5 times to figure out what the effect of that is. And OU would have a very similar numbers. If we were companies, they'd give us an incentive. I think they say for every dollar the state spends, and thank you, Leslie, for trying to help us out, every dollar the state spends, they get about $4 back. It's a great investment. So the other thing that's very important is that we're developing a lot of great talent. We're developing the leaders of tomorrow. We at Oklahoma State believe that what goes on inside the classroom is very important, but what goes on outside is just as important. That's where these kids learn leadership. That's where they learn how to work with other people and make things happen. And we really challenge them. I mean, it was our students who came up with the tobacco-free. We're the first university in America to go tobacco-free. I mean, we don't have anywhere you can go smoke. I did have a professor who sued us on an ADA claim that smoking was good for him. He had a note from his doctor that it was good for his digestion or something. So we gave him a place to smoke over by where all the satellite dishes were. I thought there might be some radiation that... And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I did walk out there, and he was smoking right outside the student union. I said, "You can't smoke here." And he said, "You don't know who I am." "Oh, yeah, I know who you are." "And I gave you a place to smoke right over there about a big satellite dish." And he said, "Well, but it's too sunny. I can't play backgammon there." And I said, "There's nothing in the ADA that requires me to give you a place where you can play backgammon." So these jobs aren't easy, believe me. The other thing I want people to understand is we're in a competitive business. We're competing, OSU is not just competing with OU. We're competing with other universities, certainly Kansas State, now Alabama, Ole Miss. I mean, there's a lot of schools that we're competing against. And our enrollment keeps growing, and that's because we're competing well on quality and on price. And we need to continue to do that. But as we get these cuts, you really end up having to look at tuition and fees. And right now, we have about the lowest tuition and fees in the Big 12. And that helps our students. They can afford it. Only half of our students even have any debt. And that debt is far below the national average. So we're trying to keep this thing affordable, but sooner or later, to be able to hire the faculty and pay them a competitive salary, to be able to put in the labs that you need, to have all of the facilities that you need, and to have the amenities that you need to attract students who will pay these fees, tuition and fees, is essential. I mean, we found with MAPS here in Oklahoma City that amenities are not just amenities, they're necessities. And that's exactly why we have to keep moving forward on the quality that we give. So when you walk on that OSU campus, I want you to say, "Wow, this is beautiful, I love it," and I want you to say, "These faculty members are the best I've ever had," and I want to be able to recruit great faculty who can do great research and bring a lot of money in from outside. And that is a real challenge, the way we're going. So we're going to have an absolute initiative to increase the number of college grads. And right now, the reason we really can't, we've tried everything, We've gone self-insured. We've got a purchasing system that saved a lot of money. Our energy management system, which is really all behavioral, has basically saved us about $38 million over the last 7 years. So we're doing everything that we can, but you can't do more. But Boone Pickens said he used to ask his dad if they could do something, and his dad would say, no, Boone, we can't. There's 3 reasons we can't do that. And he said, okay, what are they? He said, well, the first one is we don't have the money. He said, okay, what are the other 2? He said, they don't matter. So that's kind of where we are. Why can't you have more grads? Well, we don't have the money. Because we do have to, it does take money, and I can't put it all on the backs of our students and their families. So at the end of the day, I think our colleagues at OU are doing well. By the way, the rivalries that we have between each other really take place on the field. We work together in many, many ways. We have a big program with OU right now where we're working our UAV drones program and their tornado work. We're coming together. I met with their research vice president this morning before I came down. So we're working closely together. There's a big task force that the state regents have put together to see how we can be more efficient. We're doing shared services for our A&M schools, and doing back office work and trying to come up with ways to save money. And Aurora's right. I mean, these things make you do things you wouldn't otherwise probably embark on. But I can tell you that and by the way, we don't have that $1.2 billion. Some people, some of them are state gifts, so we need cooperation. Come on, I'm going to let you out of here. You got to be a little quicker than that. But seriously, a lot of them are state gifts, a lot of them are pledges, so we don't have all that money. But we're going to continue to raise money, and we're going to continue to invest and make Oklahoma State the kind of university that will attract and we can compete favorably against anybody in the country. We're building a new performing arts center, and some people would say, well, why are you doing that with all this trouble? Well, that's just the arts are a big part of your education. And by the way, in October of 2019, the New York Philharmonic has signed up to open our new Performing Arts Center. It's called the McKnight Center. So I'm not going to sit here and cry about our budget problems, even though we work cut more than anybody else. But I'm not going to make a big point of that. I just hope that if there is a special session, I hope people will really look in their heart and what they need to do for our children and for our future, and frankly for our companies and our economy. I love this state. It's a great state. I'm like Aurora. I was born in Texas, but I got smart. In fact, my wife was the University of Texas. I got her up here, so her orange has become much brighter than it was. But this is a great state with great people. We've just got to get more of us educated so that we can serve the future. Thank you very much.
Wow. I tell you, Burns, that when you do have your statue done, you will not have your hand out. But I tell you what, it was that innovative thinking and the inspiration he gives to all of our students. That's our difference maker at OSU. And I say our because I'm a proud product of OSU. I'm also a proud product of Oklahoma City Public Schools, John Marshall. So, we're doing some great things and inspiring people to take leadership roles. It's critical. And thank you for what you did in the 4th grade and inspiring Adrian to care and think and rise above. It's that kind of coaching that will make a difference in everybody's lives. And we expect you to wear that necklace that has Oklahoma on it for the rest of your life. Thank you very much. But in closing, thank you to all the speakers today. We so appreciate your leadership. And on behalf of the business community, I want to let our educators know that we stand behind you and we're committed to doing everything we can to create a better education system for our children. Please, I want to encourage everyone in this room, you've got to stay engaged. That means calling your elected officials. That means if you're a little freaked out on calling them, email them. They do appreciate and respect your input. Volunteer in a classroom or an after-school program, or perhaps you're that volleyball coach or a football coach that Superintendent Lora so desperately needs, or make a donation to your local school. Donors choose. Whatever the case may be, the more of us that can come together to change and make it even a better environment. We've got great leadership at the helm. They need us all there together. So please, you're sitting in the room, get engaged. They deserve your full commitment and encouragement. Speaking of encouragement, I encourage you to come to the Chamber Forum August 28th, where we'll talk about the proposed bond issues and sales tax initiatives that residents in Oklahoma City will have the opportunity to cast their vote September 12th. So, in closing, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel much more confident in where we're heading, and it's because of innovation, resourcefulness, and truly making a difference. So, thank you so much. We are adjourned.